City, Oklahoma City, and streaming audio at KTLV1220.com.
This is Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour on KTLV 1220. Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Jonathan Clour. Tonight on the show, we welcome State Representative candidate for Oklahoma House District 89, Dario Alvarado. He has come to share with us his vision for District 89 and the great state of Oklahoma. Before we get to Dario, we want to remind you that you can tune into our program live using the TuneIn Radio app. If you don't have it already downloaded to your phone, I want to remind you that it is 100% free. Simply go to your App Store selection on your phone, tablet, or smart device and enter TuneIn Radio into the selection bar. And remember, TuneIn is all one word. Then click Download. After you have it installed on your device, open the app, find the search bar at the top of your screen, and enter KTLV. You'll find it at the top of your list. Select the KTLV button and push play. It's that easy. Or we have one more way of watching and listening to Oklahoma Voice, and that is through live streaming at KTLV.com. And we also have our YouTube channel, where you can rewatch any shows that you might have missed, and you can see what is happening in the studios as we have our program. So, now we'll be getting to our interview with Mr. Alvarado. Dario, welcome to Oklahoma Voice.
Oh, Jonathan, thank you for having me.
Hey, you are very welcome. I was absolutely thrilled that you're willing to come on and share some time with us to talk about your vision for Oklahoma and your House district. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Jonathan, I am 27 years old. I'm running as a Republican for House District 89, which is in the south of the city. It expands south of the river all the way to southwest 44th Street from Portland Avenue to Western Avenue, make up the east and west boundaries. I've lived in Oklahoma for all my life. I moved here from Mexico when I was 3 years old. I was grew up in Oklahoma City Public Schools here, graduated from high school here, spent some time studying abroad, came back and finished up my college studies here, and have been working here in Oklahoma ever since.
Awesome. So you are classified as a young Republican, being under the age of 40. And I know that you are active in and you engage with the local young Republicans. And how does this set you apart from the candidates that are older than yourself? Or, in other words, what can you bring to the table as a young elected official that an older person cannot?
Well, we all have different visions. We all have different upbringings. I have a unique perspective on what it is to be Oklahoman, being an immigrant to the United States. I have, a great appreciation not only for the American way of life, but for the Oklahoman way of life and the Oklahoman standard. I think that so far, our government has taken us in the right direction, but we need a little bit of extra push that comes with the vision of young minds, such as the young Republicans that have, a bit different goals and have different ideas as to where we want the state to become, and as far as economics go, and diversity and education.
Awesome. And in a little bit, I want to ask you more about your ethnic background and coming from Mexico. But before we get to those topics, what words of encouragement do you have for any young individual like yourself that is willing and wanting to serve their government or community at a young age?
I always encourage people to get involved in any sort of community activity. The rewards are just amazing. You get to meet new people, you get to make new different connections, and you get to kind of feel and experience the pulse of Oklahoma, going door to door knocking, being involved in community activities, volunteer work, whether it be with the government, with your church group, or with your school group.
What made you want to run for the Oklahoma House of Representatives? That's a daunting task and quite the challenge.
Well, growing up in Oklahoma, and especially growing up in the south side of Oklahoma City, I saw a lot of inconsistencies that occurred in our district. We were passed over for a lot of development work that occurred down that occurred throughout the city. I'm sure I see that our schools are in shambles. Our infrastructure is just haunting just to look at. And then we have, a high crime rate in our city, especially in my district, District 89. And I just want to be able to come in and hopefully pass some policies that will help not only my district, but the state of Oklahoma as well.
Okay. And have you run for any other office before?
I did. I ran for City Council District, Ward 6 back in March. That was when I got my feet wet, and I actually got to get to know made a lot of connections, made a lot of friends, made a lot of friends around the community, and I got to see a whole lot more. I had some experience of what was going on in my community, living in it, but going around and knocking on doors and talking to people, it just gave me that extra push to try to and go after a public office where I could make a difference in my community and in the city of Oklahoma City and the state of Oklahoma.
And I always say, if you want to know what someone thinks about their government, go up to the doorstep and knock, and they will tell you exactly what's on their mind. Do you have any funny stories about door knocking? And I know you're knocking all the time, and you're constantly engaging and interacting with your people in the district. Are there any particular moments that have occurred to you when you were knocking that'd be worth sharing with us tonight?
Well, I wish I had, funny stories. I mean, I have meaningful stories. Especially recently, I've been knocking around a lot of the doors of the Hispanic community, and they're just absolutely thrilled to see someone actually taking interest in coming and knocking on their door and having a conversation with them. And one thing that really gets me is every time I say goodbye and after I listen to them, for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes even an hour or two, they always say the same thing, and it's in Spanish, and they say Dios me lo bendiga, which basically means may God bless you for us. And it's as if they're playing, they're placing their trust and hope in me, and that I'll go out there and win this election and do the best I can for them.
Definitely. Well, tell us about House District 89. What part of the city does this district encompass?
This part of the city is it's predominantly Hispanic. It runs basically, like I said earlier, from Portland all the way to Western, and for the most part, and from south of the river Oklahoma City down to Southwest 44th. So it includes, most of the Hispanic district in Oklahoma City. We have around 35,000 people in that district, 11,000 households, so about 3 people per household. It's a very, I couldn't say that's very diverse. There's about 23% white population, and about another 60% Hispanic population, and then about 8% African American, and I would say 3% Asian. So it's not as diverse as other areas, but when you look at the economics, it's pretty similar to a lot of the other areas in our city.
So this year you're going to be running against the incumbent, is that correct?
Yes, a Democratic incumbent.
I see. All right. What are the biggest issues facing your district, District 89, and what improvements need to be made?
Well, as with many other districts, there are 3 main things that I would like to see fixed. And they're all intertwined. They're all codependent on each other and equally as important. First off, I want to improve, bring in improvement and more jobs into that district. I want to see an improvement in education, and I want to see an improvement in public safety. In my district, there's a lot of the majority of the labor there is in construction. The majority of only about 6% of the residents in my district have a higher education degree, or about 42 of them have a high school degree, and over half of them don't have a high school degree. So over 52% of them don't have a high school degree. And we need to provide a diverse job market in Oklahoma City. We need more than just office and administrative jobs. We need more manufacturing, more production of goods, and more construction jobs. And we need to be centered around communities other than downtown. We've done a great job at improving downtown. Don't get me wrong, we've done a great job, but it's time to bring some of that investment, those jobs and improvements, to other areas of the city, such as District 89. By bringing in investments and jobs and community improvements, we bring funds to improve our schools, fund our police departments, which are 2 very important issues that I'm running on. District 89 has a large student population, and our schools are consistently ranked as some of the worst schools in Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma itself ranks 48th in the nation as far as education goes. So, what I propose is to improve not just the schools in my district, but in all of Oklahoma. And part of what I'm proposing is school choice. We need to allow the parents the choice to send their children to the schools of their choosing, rather than to confine them to the schools that consistently underperform other schools in the district and in the United States.
Okay, and Dario, that was my next question. Do you have any schools in your district? And you've answered that. Have you done any outreach with these schools or in the local community?
I started when I was 18 years old, in high school here. I started a nonprofit called Mariposa Inc. And since I was big into music, I was a classically trained guitarist. We did a program that reached out to schools in the South Side, such as what's it called, Roosevelt Elementary Middle School, Northwest Claflin, Grant, where we went around and we gave free guitar lessons and provided free instruments for students who were willing to sign up and commit to a certain amount of time to getting guitar lessons or any type of music lessons with us. It was a form to kind of keep kids out of trouble. Now, Roosevelt Elementary School was recently in the news because of teachers quitting due to not having the support of the staff, of the administration. They were being abused, spit on, cussed at,
Wow.
around by these students, and they weren't getting the help that they needed. And of course, that shows them in the middle school's performance academically.
Wow. If elected, what will your first step of action be? And some of the issues that you brought up that affects District 89 are state issues and perhaps even national issues as well. What do you want to see take place in the Oklahoma legislature if you're elected this year? What piece of legislation would you write, or what would be the first cause that you would push for?
In our district, and as well as a lot of other districts in the city, we're seeing a problem with abandoned buildings. Abandoned building complexes or abandoned houses, where the city kind of has their hands tied, and the state legislature and the city kind of just kick the bucket to each other and just say, well, you handle it. Well, we need to be able to come up with a system that allows us to deal with these sort of abandoned buildings in an efficient manner, because these abandoned buildings, abandoned properties, become a hotbed for prostitution, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and cartel activity. And these, not only that, they pose a public safety issue aside from those crime-related issues whenever they catch on fire, and they put in danger those houses that people work so hard to improve, and just to lose it because somebody or some owner of a property that lives over in California didn't want to take care of it, didn't want to invest in improving it. All the community has to suffer because of that. We want to make sure that these abandoned buildings are dealt with in a manner that is efficient and that is productive for the communities around them.
And it seems to me like you're knowledgeable on the municipal level, and especially if you were running for city council, you were exposed to issues that are facing our local municipalities. And it looks like that you've got a good solid ground of understanding between Oklahoma City and the legislature, and you might be able to bridge some of these gaps. So, as you say, we won't stop kicking the can down the road and passing it to each other from the the state level to the city level.
Absolutely. It's an issue that that the city says we have our hands tied, and the legislature says it's the city issue. So they just pass the blame back and forth. It's something that we need to issue. We need to fix, and we need to fix quickly, because as our infrastructure expands, as our population grows, and they become public nuisances that can affect the development of a community.
And one issue comes to mind is the Oklahoma Native American Cultural Center. And I know that the Oklahoma legislature had promised years ago that if private funds were raised, then they would take care and supplement the rest of the funds, for the cultural center to be built. And now we see that the legislature did not provide the money, and now the Indian Cultural Center has reverted into the care of the city of Oklahoma City. Do you have any thoughts about the Cultural Center or its outlook?
definitely something that we could always use more culture in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma. However, I'm just disappointed with the way the way it was dealt with. First off, I believe that it should have done purely on private funds. I think the city or the state should have been involved in that, since it wasn't a project that we undertook in the first place. But now we're left with this building that we have to maintain, we have to have upkeep of, and it's not really being productive. We definitely have to find a way to address that issue. But to be frank, I don't know too much about that specific building, because it wasn't in my district whenever I was running. But it is something that needs to be taken a look at, because it's costing our taxpayers money to maintain it and to have it under our jurisdiction.
Okay, and if we have any listeners just now tuning in, we are talking to Dario Alvarado. He is a state representative candidate for House District 89, and we are discussing some of the issues that Oklahoma is facing and some of the solutions that he has to resolve some of these problems. Dario, I know that you are you get out and you pound the pavement, and you don't stand idle. And I know earlier this year you had a voter registration drive in your district. And why did you feel that this was important?
Well, listen, there's a few figures that I'd like to bring up about my district. We have 35,000 people, which is a good number. There's actually, out of that, there's actually about 64% of the population in my district are citizens. They're natural-born citizens. About 4.8% are naturalized, and 30% are non-citizens. Whenever you have a population that 35,000, and out of those 64% are citizens, but you only have 5,000 people that are registered to vote. We need more people to be registered. We need more people to be active, whether they be Republican, Independent, or Democrat. It doesn't matter. We need to have an active constituent base, active voter block, because only then will our voice of our district be heard at the state level, at the city level, and only then will we be able to get some of that money, that's coming in to root those roads, to provide infrastructure, renovations and those and community improvements. Only then will we be able to have that strong voice to be able to garnish that attention. And we need to have more active voters. We need to have more registered voters, more people that can actually go out and vote. So when I was looking at these numbers, I said, we have 60% of the 35,000 people are eligible to vote. Only 5,000 of those are actually registered to vote. There's certainly room for improvement as far as getting people registered to vote. And once people are registered to vote, it's a whole lot easier to get up and go out and vote on election day.
Those are some alarming figures. Do you think that the younger generation's voice is at jeopardy because they choose not to get out and vote?
Absolutely. Speaking, as you mentioned earlier, we're involved with a lot of the young Republicans here in Oklahoma County and other counties. And speaking with them, we all have, kind of a similar ideology and similar goals that sometimes comes at odds with that of the general establishment, or some of those, sometimes rural areas that may have a different, view of what we think, or sometimes urban areas. So we need to have, a better representation of younger people, because the policies that are being shaped today will affect our lives, not just for the next coming years, but for coming generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe that is something that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party has taken upon themselves to activate the younger generations, and it's just simply encouraging them to get out and vote. And there are huge percentages of, let's just say, young Republicans or young Democrats, folks that are under the age of 40, that do not vote. They don't know who their local city council person is. They don't know who their local state legislator is. And one day they might wake up and they will be alarmed because they might find a piece of legislation that has come down the pike, and they realize that it hits home to them, and they wish they would have said, hey, I wish I would have, stepped up and voted in this election, because just our local elections, I mean, the voter turnout is so very low. It's extremely low.
Yes, absolutely. I think the election that we had for city council, we had one of the lowest turnouts that we've had in the past, I believe, 5 to 10 years. It was just abysmal. Now, you can always, discount, discard it to being, the weather being chilly and rainy, etc. But, when people want to vote, they go out and vote, and they'll do it, whether it's raining, if it's snowing, whether it's cold or, 100 degrees outside. They'll go out there and they'll stand and they'll vote because, they know the value of it. And I think that's one thing that we need to really, really drive home the point is the value of voting. It's important because, you're performing your civil duty, but it also has value because the things that you vote on are the things that are going to affect you, especially at the city level. And this is where most of us have our first contact with government. When you go out and, you want to do something to your house and you want to do a remodeling, you have to go down and get permits, and all that gets regulated by the city council and the Department of Planning and all these things that are involved in municipal government.
So, Dario, are you generally for less government?
Yes, I am a strong believer in small government.
And do you consider yourself a conservative?
I do.
Okay. Going back to our points that we were touching on earlier, you say that your family had immigrated from Mexico, and you are of Hispanic origin. What city did your family come from?
Well, my dad came from the city called Lerdo, Durango. It's in Durango, Mexico, and my mom came from an estate down in the southern part of the state of Chihuahua. The slightly different families. My mother's family, had inherited, land that's been in our family for generations, and my dad's, family was a little bit less well off,
right?
If you'll say so. It was an interesting combination to see, my mom and my dad end up together. But I think the thing that bound them together was that both our families were entrepreneurial. They were hardworking, and they valued the values of faith, family, and hard work above all, and they never expected anything to be handed to them. And that's something that, was instilled in me by my grandparents and by my dad. That regardless of who you are, where you come from, you work hard, and you don't depend on handouts, you're going to get what you deserve.
Yeah. And it's clear that your family has immigrated to America, and just as mine did, perhaps, a couple hundred years ago, and the majority of the population in the United States, with illegal immigration being at the forefront of pressing issues lately, how serious do you feel illegal immigration is currently to Oklahoma locally and perhaps nationally?
I think, and being an immigrant myself, I think we do need to take a stronger stance on immigration, simply because if you look at around a lot of the crime here, you have cartel activity in Oklahoma City. It's not as blatant as it is in Mexico, but we do have some of that organized crime here in Oklahoma City. We've seen it in the news a couple of times, where in Lawton they shut down a horse operation ranch that was laundering money for the Zeta cartel. You have, methamphetamine operations that are going on here in Oklahoma City that are being run by the same cartels that are doing the mass killings down in Mexico. We need to have, police department, local police department, sheriff's department, state patrol, and OSBI communicating to be able to identify these individuals, these organized crime rings, and be able to take them down and keep our community safe. So, I'm not worried about, the family down the street that's working hard and, working 2 jobs to make ends meet and send their kids to school and succeed and live the American dream. That's not what concerns me. What concerns me is the criminal element that can cross through our porous borders. And not only that, you have the cartels, but, terrorists can come in as easy as these cartel members can cross over. And so you want to prevent, similar events that have occurred in the past here, but also that have occurred in Madrid, Spain, that have occurred in Paris, France most recently, and London, England.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Do you feel that the Hispanic and Latino communities need to take a stronger stance on illegal immigration to prevent exactly what you have just stated?
I think, first off, the concern with the Hispanic community has more to do with family. They don't want to see families torn apart, and neither do I, frankly. And I don't think neither do a lot of opponents of strong immigration reform. I think what they're worried about is mass deportations that will split apart families, and there's 11 million immigrants already that here. And it's going to be very difficult to deport them all. So we need to find a way to allow them a pathway to residency, and it may be eventually to citizenship, but it's not an amnesty. Definitely not an amnesty. I think that a lot of people that have come here and done it the right way would feel cheated if we were to allow another amnesty in American history, because honestly, these are people that have broken the law, regardless of the reason that they did it. They have broken the law, and they need to pay some consequences, whether it be monetary fines in order to become residents, or having to go to the back of the line. But we can't not have amnesty. That would send the wrong message to future generations of possible immigrants. They're going to say, well, let's go to the United States. Eventually, we'll have enough numbers that we'll get another amnesty. We need to prevent that. We need to have stronger measures. We need to have the laws that are already there enforced, and we need to, be able to keep families together, to to be able to protect ourselves from further attacks from possible terrorist groups or, cartel organized crime groups.
Mm. Shifting gears a little bit, Dario, have you always been a Republican?
No, growing up, I made we all make mistakes in life.
Oh, it was a mistake.
we all pretty, growing up, and it's true what they say. As you grow older, you become more conservative. I've always been instilled with Republican values. What was alarming to me at first was social issues. Being young, being impressionable, you get to see, you hear a lot of propaganda from the left that makes you kind of believe in it. But once I was able to get out of the United States, out of Oklahoma, and go in and see what it is, what it's actually like in these countries, that these certain parties, every time that they talk about, universal health care or free education, everything, and they bring it up and bring up certain social issues and higher taxes, and I had the opportunity to go study in Europe, and I had the opportunity to go study in Germany and in a lot of these Scandinavian countries, and I got to see that yes, they did have these great services, but they also had a lot of higher taxes, less available income, and there wasn't as much as upward mobility as there is in the United States. So going out there, experiencing these countries for my own, kind of solidified what I believed already, was that enterprise is very important. The less government there is, the better, and the less regulation there is, the better, to allow these entrepreneurs to start their companies and create more jobs for the economy and provide the type of upward mobility that we've always been accustomed to here in the United States.
Interesting. Dario, I'm going to play devil's advocate here just a little bit. And some people may view changing party affiliation as something a flip-flopper would do. How do you defend your decision to turn your allegiance to conservative values and perhaps to the Republican Party?
I wouldn't say that I necessarily turned my values to the Republican Party. My values were always about small government and small regulation. When it came to social issues, the Democratic Party at that time spoke more to social issues than they did to the fiscal issues. Social issues are important. They are. But once you get to look at it, a lot of young Republicans, when it comes to a lot of the modern social issues, aren't very different from a lot of moderate, Democrats. They're very similar, but the way in which we want to solve them is different. One side wants the issue to be addressed through small government, through changes that occur naturally in government, while the other side wants to implement large and sweeping legislation that forces us all to kind of fall in line to what their beliefs are.
Okay, and I'm going to take this one step further, Dario. I look at the newly elected state vice chairman of the Republican Party, Estela Hernandez. She is Hispanic, and I believe the first Hispanic to be elected to this statewide capacity. Also, she is classified, I think, as a young Republican as well. And our state has taken a leap of progress forward, I feel, with her election. and she suggests that the Republican Party is the party for our Hispanic and our Latino people. How do you tell Hispanics, and especially young Hispanics and young Latinos, that there is another option besides the Democrat Party?
It's something that Estella and I have always tried to talk about packaging and messaging. And unfortunately, it's difficult to be a conservative Hispanic Republican in Oklahoma and just in general, because we have to overcome the Republican Party inability to package and send the right message. Especially due to the recent anti-immigration tone at a party that some in similarly anti-Hispanic rhetoric that some of our louder voices in our party have put out there. We as Latinos, as Hispanic Republicans, are tasked with having to explain how certain voices in the party don't represent us or the entire Republican Party, rather than allowing us to focus on the issues of faith, family values, small government, and free enterprise. Issues which, you're right, appeal to the large majority of Hispanics.
Very well said. So how can people help with your campaign?
Well, I'm always, if you go to my Facebook page, I have a website on there. You can always contact me. I'm always looking for volunteers. Right now, I'm just focusing on getting those doors knocked. We're not doing anything big in terms of fundraising or anything like that. Right now, we're just focusing on getting a good ground game out there, covering as much ground as possible. It's not a big district. There's not that many voters, but I want to be able to hit those doors a couple of times before the actual election. Ideally 3 to 4 times before from here until the election comes out.
Definitely. People don't realize how much work goes into running an election, and a lot of times it takes long hours a day, even 16 hours a day, or perhaps even staying up all day and all night. And in some of these local races, people think that it's just a piece of cake, but it's not. And like a local House race, for you to win a House seat, you have to knock literally thousands of doors in that district.
Absolutely, knock 1,000 at least 4 times. So you've knocked them 4,000 or 5,000 doors.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dario, thank you so very much for joining us tonight on the program. Do you have any last words to say?
Jonathan, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I wish you the best of luck with it. As far as my campaign goes, I want to. If there's any Hispanic listeners listening out there, Hispanic and Republican, you're not alone. We're out there. They may not see us very often, but come out to our Young Republicans meetings that we have every last Monday of the month. And we usually have at Slaughter Hall. We have a Facebook page that you can look us up at, and I do want to appreciate you for having me once again on your show.
You're welcome, Dario, and I'm sure you'll be back on very soon. And we appreciate your contribution to Oklahoma Voice and making a difference in our city and the great state of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Jonathan. You as well.
Good night, Dario.
Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this evening's broadcast. I want to remind you that we record the show live and upload the day's program on YouTube, so make sure you check out our videos or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. We'd like to thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing Oklahoma Voice. As always, good night, good luck, and thunder up. This has been Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. Tune in Monday through Friday night at 7 p.m. on the TuneIn Radio app, by live streaming at KTLV.com, or by radio on station 1220 AM. Hi, this is Jonathan Clour.